want to share some of my favourite things that are happening here in the garden at the moment, and obviously I'm going to start off at borage. I love it. It looks so good right now with the lighting, and I can hear a couple of little bees going about, but this is just the start of, it's going to get this big, full of amazing blue flowers. So we've come here quite early in the morning. A couple of benefits of that: the light is nice, and it's also nice and cool, about 11 degrees Celsius, because later on today it's going to reach 22, 23, and it's been like that for the last few weeks. So we've just decided to do a lot of mulching, basically because there's no moisture about, and we can't spend a whole time carrying watering cans. And yes, there's a risk of more slug damage, but when it works, it works. Here we've got, this is Candy Rockster, which is a squash that is looking nice and healthy. We've got a bunch that are planted along here that we've mulched quite heavily with hay just to retain the moisture, and it's going to break down. And just been doing all sorts of other kinds of mulching to just try and protect the moisture as best as possible. So just water first, mulch after, and then the plants are going to be a little bit happier. So the other day on Instagram, I saw a really interesting set of stories by Ben Falk. He is probably best described as like a permaculture regenerative grower farmer, and it was about mulch, and it's something that comes up quite a lot, especially on comments on my videos. Everyone's like, oh, if you're mulching with grass clippings, what about weed seeds? And this is kind of just paraphrasing, but he was saying he says that having mulched ground, provided that you don't have slug issues. I know some of you in the UK, maybe this might not apply to you, but mulched ground is infinitely better than bare ground, even if it has weed seeds, because it's very easy to remove. You can just rake off the mulch, pick out any of the seedlings that are starting to appear, but it's protecting the soil. And especially with the massive lack of rainfall that we're having at the moment, just having protected soil, prioritizing the soil over the plants will just benefit. That is going to be much better than just leaving the soil bare, and that is something I am absolutely fully behind and have been approaching that for the last few years. So this has now been set up as a temporary fruit cage. Put the net over, just stapled this bit of wood at the base, and the idea is that you can just lift it up to access the soft fruit. So we've put in, it's like a paper mulch at the back from Mulch Organic. So we've put that down to start to kill off like the grass at the back, because as I mentioned last time, want to plant strawberries in amongst the back there, and it's definitely something that we're going to get done. So that's the idea. The Mulch Organic is down. We can then cut little holes and transplant the strawberries, and then essentially when the season's over, we can just easily remove this, pack it away nicely, and then put it back in place next season. And this is very low cost. This is some spare pipe that we had from a previous project. The only real investment was a bit of netting and perhaps a couple of staples. And I forgot to mention that there are also some sylvanberries from the kind of main kitchen garden that we've propagated by layering, and they are now along the back as well. So we're going to have sylvanberries, strawberries, red currants, gooseberries, all in this little enclosure. So it's starting to feel quite nice and enclosed here in the WiFi garden. It's about 10 by 8 meters in size, and the back bed is all Jerusalem artichokes. Call me crazy, I know, and that's absolutely fine. So in front here, we've got Gaia soybeans that have put on an amazing amount of growth over the last week, and then sweet corn interplanted with dwarf beans here. These calendula are just looking absolutely stunning, but it's just so nice to have this space that's just like filling up with so many different things. And I'm excited for next year, because we're going to be kind of approaching this as a slightly different project. But kind of the field beans, they've got even taller than the last Huw's Diaries video, and the beans are getting even closer to start harvesting. One of my favourite perennial vegetables is Oka OCA is how it's spelt. So we've just put in a load along here, it is such a fun tuber to grow. You get them in different colours. The most popular ones are kind of like a reddy pink and a yellow. Now, they don't, what I learnt last winter is that anything kind of past -10 degrees in the soil and a really terrible winter, they will rot. So the idea is that you harvest them in December and then they just store really easily. You can just store them as long as they just kind of dry out a bit in a pantry, and then plant them the following spring, a bit like a potato tuber. But yeah, these are gonna grow massive and spill over onto the pathway, produce a lot of tubers, because I really want to increase the production of this amazing crop. Just a little one this year. We're doing a few more little ornamental borders to add pops of colour around the gardens, and yeah, it's nice to see this one starting to really come into life now that the cosmos has also decided to make an appearance. One of my favourite things is about little nooks in the garden and just having a little bit of fun, and also the surprises that come along with that. So in these Vega garden beds, got a couple of outdoor girl tomato, the variety, and red alert, and obviously a little courgette there. And so these are coming on really nicely. Need to prune them a bit. And then behind me here, well, the climbing rose is flowering, but I completely forgot that there's a lemon verbena tucked away in here, and I've only just realised that now, because it's put on a huge amount of growth. It's in a lot of shade, but it's looking amazing. There's a nasturtium underneath it. You've got the onions, we've got the peas, so much happening. And you know, this perpetual spinach, so much happening, all within an arm's reach. Okay, I got a little bit distracted whilst Sam was filming. Oregon sugar pods. We just have to mark this occasion. It is so good. So good because you don't have to open up the pods, you can just eat everything. This is the first few of the season of what is going to be kilos of Oregon sugar pods that I'm going to be eating. And I just wanted to capture that. So the tomatoes in this polytunnel are doing pretty well, and here there's a couple of interesting crops that are just popping up. So firstly is buckwheat, which is very welcome. I adore buckwheat, and this will be kind of just self-sown from the crops that we grew last year. And also it looks like lots of little exploding cucumbers, which were growing on this corner of the polytunnel last year, and they literally do explode. They shoot out at a crazy speed, these little tiny seeds. And so we found these little seedlings popping up all over this polytunnel, even though there's just one patch there. So just be warned, if you grow exploding cucumbers, expect them to start to take over. So here we have seedlings that I've potted on of Ford Hook giant chards. I just want to get them a little bit more mature before planting them out. And I reckon next week I'm going to be planting these out. These are huge, giant chard plants. The clue's a little bit in the name. And if you have a really small space, growing a variety like Ford Hook giant chard is an absolute must, because you're going to get a huge amount of food in a small space, and it's a gift that keeps on giving, and it'll overwinter, and then the following spring send up excuse me, I'll have to get a close-up of this. Following spring, send up, again, loads more shoots during the hungry gap to continue to feed you. In a recent video, I was talking about crops to sow in June, and I mentioned Pak Choy. And so the main thing that I want you to get across, because a lot of people mention about bolting, is to avoid the red varieties of Pak Choy and instead go for the green. This here is, going to try and pull it out, there we go. This here is Joy Choy, and this has been very, very productive for us this year. This is one of the driest beds. It's in a polytunnel, it gets extra hot. These haven't shown any sign of bolting whatsoever. and it is when all of the daylight hours are increasing and lengthening. So if you are wanting to grow Pak Choy, you can do it even in a polytunnel, but go for these greener varieties. If you feel like you might be playing a little bit of catch up with this growing season and you still have space to fill with crops that you haven't yet sown, this video right here shows you just a bunch of different things that you can sow in this month of June for kind of self-sufficiency and a lot of food.